Now it's time for Culture Talk, where we talk about culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. I'm joined today with biochemist Fazale Rana. Welcome.
Sandra, thanks for having me.
You know, we're going to be talking about good and bad evidence for God's existence. And there is one thing that I remember you've written about before called laminin that was used as good evidence, but maybe isn't. So can you explain first, what is laminin?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when people find out that I'm a biochemist and they're Christians, the first thing they oftentimes want to do is talk to me about laminin.
Yeah.
And they're so excited because they see this as very powerful evidence for God's existence. But again, as you said, it isn't really. But laminin is actually a very important protein. It's part of what's called the extracellular matrix. So you have cells that actually secrete materials that form a matrix that the cells then are embedded in. So they kind of create their own environment. And these molecules that they secrete are different types of proteins and different types of polysaccharides that form this extracellular matrix. And laminin is one of those proteins. And it happens to have what biochemists would call three subunits, alpha, beta, and gamma. And the alpha subunit is a long fibrous protein, and the beta and the gamma subunits are shorter fibrous proteins that attach to the alpha subunit about midpoint. So it forms a cross shape. And it has a number of binding sites that can bind other proteins, polysaccharides. It can bind a protein in cell membranes called integrin. And as a result of this, it kind of holds the extracellular matrix together, and it kind of holds attaches cells to cells and anchors cells in that extracellular matrix. So it kind of is a glue type material that's holding everything together.
So I already see then the connection. It's like, all right, we've got this cross-shaped protein that holds everything together, just like Christ holds everything together. And this is evidence that God is in even the creation of cells and proteins and all of that.
And that is his fingerprint is in each one of the cells in our body, right?
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to make that analogy, except it's not true, right?
Well, I mean, it's fine if you look at something like that and it prompts you to worship or have a devotional experience, but it's not something that you want to present to a skeptic, to a non-believer as scientific evidence for a creator, right? And there's a number of reasons for this. You know, one is that a T-shaped material isn't necessarily that unusual. It's a fairly simple design. It occurs all over the place in nature. So why are you necessarily singling this out? But also, in reality, the laminin molecule, even though we see it represented like in biology textbooks as a cross-like molecule, its arms are actually quite floppy. So it's really in a highly convoluted, folded state when it's holding everything together. Biochemists just represent it in textbooks as a T because it helps you to visualize the overall molecular architecture and where the different binding sites for different types of proteins and polysaccharides exist. So it's really a tool that biochemists use to get insight and to communicate about the molecule.
And is that the actual shape of it, or what does it look like?
It is T-shaped, but but it's highly convoluted. So the fact of the matter is it probably looks more like a swastika in real life than actually a cross. It's very unusual if it would be actually truly cross-shaped. Now, I've seen people record electron micrographs of laminin, and there are electron micrographs where it, again, is T-shaped. But that's just an artifact of sample preparation. More often than not, those electron micrographs show a highly folded molecule. So it's an elegantly designed molecule, to be certain, to serve its role as kind of an attachment, for a number of different molecules to kind of create integrity to the extracellular matrix and anchor cells to one another and to the matrix. But it's not really truly cross-shaped in real life.
Right. And it's good to kind of stop the presses there before saying, hey, this is a cross-shaped thing, and it shows that the God of the Bible is the one who has left his fingerprint everywhere. but just to say like, let's marvel at the design and appreciate that, but not take it to that next level, because again, you're saying it kind of represents more of like a swastika. That's not a shape we want to be advocating for. So that is then an example of, taking something that is elegantly designed, but then inserting a story that doesn't quite fit. And unfortunately, that gets, shared across, the internet. People continue to share it. So that's an example of, like, would you say that's an example of bad evidence for God's existence? Okay.
Yes.
So then where do people go? Because they're going to stumble upon this and other arguments for God's existence. How do they check to see what is valid and what is questionable at best?
Yeah. Well, what I like to do is look at the history of how people have philosophically, or traditionally how people have philosophically argued for God's existence, and then look at how the scientific evidence can be used to bolster these philosophical arguments. So that one of the classic design arguments is the watchmaker argument of William Paley, where he was comparing, attributes of human designs with attributes of biological systems, showing the similarity. And so we can do the same kind of thing with biochemical systems, where there are these remarkable biochemical designs that are eerie in terms of their similarity to human designs. That would be a better approach. And there's some fascinating, remarkable biochemical systems like molecular motors and DNA computers and all kinds of cool things that I think can be used to make a bona fide argument for design.
Well, and you've written plenty about these design arguments in your book, Fit for a Purpose, and also elsewhere. So I think for anyone who's curious, they can definitely check out Fit for a Purpose. Are there some, aside from the molecular motors, and I think you said DNA computers? Any other things that you would point our viewers to say, hey, these might be some good things to check out when you're looking for good evidence?
Yeah, well, to me, ultimately, the information content of biomolecules is really provocative, because, biochemical systems are information systems, and we know from experience information comes from a mind. But what's remarkable is that information is structured in the same way that we would structure information. And so the similarities to me are quite eerie and really provocative.
Thank you so much for that, Fuzz. We're barely touching the surface on this topic, so if you want to learn more about it, go to reasons.org and look for Dr. Fazale Rana's blog, The Cells Design. You can also find his book at support.reasons.org. Search for Fit for a Purpose.